Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's masterclass. I hope that you guys can hear me. Um, okay, so in this session, we will be focusing mostly on learning unit 4 to 7. However, your summative is all the learning units. Okay, so make sure that you study everything, including what was in your test. Okay, so that was learning unit 1 to 3. Make sure you cover that as well. So the reason why I'm focusing mostly on 4 to 7 is because in our previous masterclass, we did look at 1 to 3 quite in depth. So if you do have any issues or questions about that, you can feel free to message on the chat box, and then I will get into it after the session. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to look at the exam brief that was given to you guys. This is available on your student portal under student material. You just type in your module code and you should be able to find it. So this exam brief just breaks down what your paper would look like in terms of its structure. Okay, so go look at it. There's more information on there. I'm just just basically just gonna cover what the structure of it looks like. So you have 3 sections. Okay, you have 4 questions, I think. Question 1 is multiple choice. Question 2 is your true and false. Question 3, you're looking at any definitions or concepts that you need to explain. Okay, and whenever you have questions as such, where they ask you for a definition or they ask you to explain a concept, they will ask you to provide examples. So this is where your application comes in and you need to provide some kind of example as to what you mean. And then the last section, it looks at answering questions based on a case study. So that might be like your longest section. Questions here are usually longer because you are looking into a case study and you are needing to apply yourself based on the case study. So always make sure to read the whole case study and then just answer the questions that follow using examples that are in the case study to justify whatever you are explaining and whatever they ask of you. Okay, so go have a look at this. It is in your student portal. And I think it'll be really helpful. It will help you to manage your time a lot better if you just have an idea of what is expected of you. Okay, so I'm going to go through this as quickly as I possibly can. There is a lot from learning unit 4 to 7. So I'm not going to be going in depth with each concept or with each section. But if you do find that there is a section that you want me to go more in depth with, then please just raise your hand or message on the chat box and I will explain it. Okay, so learning unit 4 is all about management. It's looking at management as people and management as a process. Okay, so there's 2 kinds. So when we have management as people, we are basically looking at managers, okay, the positions that they occupy, what they do. So if you recall, top management, middle management, lower management, these are our managers in the organization that helps us structure our organization. It helps us with the overall direction of the organization. It also helps us in just ensuring that we are meeting our company goals. Okay, and that's what we have managers for. It's to lead the direction of the organization. We also have management as a process. So when we're looking at management as a process, we're basically looking at the 4 functions. Okay, so remember when you are a manager, you are required to manage. You're required to manage the organization. So this comes with the ability to plan, lead, organize, and control, which is broken down further in the learning units. Okay, so the ability to plan helps managers set directions, set the strategic direction in the business, and also to plan goals and objectives. When it comes to organizing, here we need to be able to organize our resources so that we have enough and they don't get depleted. Okay, remember, we always need to preserve our resources and also just to plan them better. So, plan the usage of our resources. This can be our physical resources, it can be human resources, it can be any kind of resource. Okay, and also the ability to lead. So managers need to be able to lead people in the organization. Remember, this is essentially important because you want employees to be motivated. You want them to actually accomplish the goals and objectives that you have in the organization. So if you don't have good leadership capabilities, or if you are not good at motivating people in that way, that will later become an issue. Okay, it will become an issue because employees will not be willing to work towards your performance objectives, and also just the efficiency and the effectiveness of the organization will be affected. Okay, and then the last function of management, which is control, which again we will look at more in depth as we go on. Control simply means just taking control of everything. So if we're looking at the operations process, having control measures in place just ensures that no mistakes are being made, or if there are mistakes that are being made, it is picked up on early and it is also rectified. Okay, so when managers control, essentially they are just monitoring, they are evaluating, they are keeping track of whatever they set out. So if it's a strategy, for example, they are controlling the strategy by means of monitoring it. If it's your operational process, they're looking at how goods are transformed and if everything is going as smoothly as possible. Okay, so, how this ties into everything in the organization is we have our resources, which are our people. It's the knowledge and the information that we have, it's the expertise, it's the capital. All of this is used in our planning, leading, organizing, and controlling. So, managers will use people. They will use the knowledge through their market research. They will use their inputs, such as capital, and they will transform it into strategies. They will transform it into setting the overall strategic intent of the organization. They will use it in control measures. They will use it to lead. And all of this is to provide us with meeting our organizational goals. So that means our profitability. Okay, that's a big one. And then brand recognition, our social impact as well, and also just the overall market share. Okay, so the whole purpose of our management process is to get us to those end goals that we're trying to accomplish. So, as I was saying, when it comes to management, you have four main functions, and these functional activities will be very prevalent in management throughout your throughout the business. So regardless if you are top, middle, or lower, you will always have responsibilities in terms of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So when it comes to planning, this is the first step of our management process. This looks at just deciding what needs to be done and how we can do it. And remember, when it comes to planning, if you think back to your business planning, that's such an important aspect. So that is a skill that managers need to have, because when it comes to business, there will be a lot of strategies to plan. There will be a lot of projects to plan. There will be a lot of goals to set, a lot of objectives to set. So when we have this skill, it makes it easier for us to get or to take information from the external environment and transform it into something useful, something that we can actually use to reach our company goals and objectives. Okay, so we have different types of plans that come or that are formed. You have strategic plans, you have your tactical plans, you have operational plans, and different types of plans will be governed by different levels of management. But it's important to know that each level of management will still have planning skills and capabilities. Okay. When it comes to organizing, so again, being able to coordinate tasks and activities, being able to manage your resources is such an important aspect of management, because if we did not have the organizing capability, we would not be able to manage our resources in a way that it is sustainable. And we need our resources to be sustainable, especially if you are a brand new business. If you are depleting your resources too quickly, that will become a problem later on. So it's just important that we are ensuring that anything that we are using in the organization is organized in such a way that it will be efficient, it will be effective. And then also organizing can look at the organizational structure and just organizing people, putting them in the right jobs, ensuring that their performance objectives are met, efficiency and effectiveness of certain operations are also met. And then leading, so leadership, very important as well. The ability to motivate employees to ensure that they are working towards our company goals. Okay, we need to be able to do that. Managers can have different types of leadership. So they can be more hands-on, they can delegate a little bit more. Different situations will require you to have different levels of, not different levels, but different types of leadership. So maybe you'll be in a situation where you actually need employees to follow a plan step by step, so you become very hands-on, or maybe it's a task that's a little bit more easier that you're able to delegate to them. So it just depends on the situation. Leaders can have different approaches. Like you can have a manager that has different ways of leading people during different things. Okay, but the basis of it is just the ability to motivate. And then when it comes to control, this is the process of monitoring. Okay, it's looking at evaluating our processes, evaluating procedures, evaluating our operations in the company. And all of this is done so we know where we need to improve. So if we didn't have any control measures in place, it will become very hard for us to establish what we actually need to do better on, where we need to progress. And also when we miss this control step, you'll find that there can be a lot of mistakes that are being made in the organization, which is not good for us. So we need to essentially have different control measures in place as managers to ensure that our performance targets are met. And if they're not met, the control aspect allows you to understand where you're deviating. Okay, so for example, maybe if you're looking at your performance targets, you can look back to your business plan to see what was your set performance target. And then you can measure that up against what your actual performance is. And that gap that you find, or that difference that you find, you can then go and investigate that and find why is your performance lacking. Okay, so control becomes very important for those types of things because, again, if we don't have any control, this is a competitive risk for us. Okay, so I hope that was understandable. We're going to move on to the different roles of management. Okay, so we understand that managers plan, lead, organize, and control, but there are also different roles that they do occupy. So we can have more of an informational role, we can have an interpersonal role, and we can have a decisional role. These types of roles are also, like, managers can embody these types of roles at different times as being a manager. Okay, different situations will require you to have a specific type of role. So if we look at the first one, which is our informational roles, these are our monitors, our disseminators, and the spokesperson. Okay, so our monitors, these are the managers that perform duties as seeking information, and this can look into doing a lot of market research. So a lot of external market research. Our disseminators, these are the managers that are now using this information, um, and just also just understanding what the information means. Okay. And then also your spokesperson performs duties such as taking this information and then just um, elaborating on that. Okay, so spreading that information. So you can have something of this sort. If you think about your public relations officers, these will be like your spokesperson for the company. So they will take information, they will transform it, and then they are able to speak for the business. We also have more of a decisional role. So this type of role, you have your entrepreneurs, you have your disturbance handlers, your negotiators, your resource allocators. Okay, so again, managers can be entrepreneurs. These are just initiating projects that look into improving and being more innovative and also just being more creative. We know that this is what managers do. Okay, managers are innovative and creative because they are also formulating strategies and they are also communicating those strategies to the rest of the organization. So they can be entrepreneurs and have those innovative, creative mindsets. Also, in terms of disturbance handlers, so this is just when corrective action is taken. Okay, so managers are required to embody this type of role when conflict arises. And conflict can arise a lot in an organization because of um, maybe there's disturbances in that organization, or maybe employees are not getting along, or maybe work tasks are not being completed correctly. This is where managers will step in and take that corrective action where needed. You have your negotiators. So when it comes to negotiating, this can be in terms of you negotiating with your unions, or you negotiating with contracts, or you're negotiating with employees on something, or maybe it will be other business owners. So here again, management will have to embody this type of role when they maybe want to get an alliance with another company, or when they are communicating with trade unions and they have to now settle on an agreement. And then resource allocators. So these types of managers set priorities and decide who is given what resource. So when we get resources in a company, they are usually allocated to different departments, depending on what is needed, of course. So when a manager is a resource allocator, he's simply just allocating resources that are needed in each department. And that is our different roles. We also have interpersonal. Okay, so interpersonal roles, if you think about it, is your um more communication, more um like going and networking, those kinds of things. So we have figureheads here, we have leaders, and we also have a liaison. Okay, so our figureheads, these are the managers that will attend events. They will also attend, maybe they'll attend conferences, and they are also looking at being the head for, or like the spokesperson for that department. When we have leaders, as I said in previously, when it comes to leaders, this involves a lot of motivating, a lot of training, and this is going to involve a lot of development for employees as well. So when you're a leader, you are mostly focused on ensuring that employees are doing the correct thing. And if they need any training or if they need any counseling, you're able to provide that as a leader. And then when you are a liaison, you're performing duties like creating and maintaining information and just ensuring that the link between the inside and the outside of the organization is secure and is sustainable. So that's all that those are. So you can be any one of these types of roles depending on the given situation. And you'll find that managers sometimes will have to embody more of an informational role. Sometimes they are all three. Okay, different levels of management require more. So, for example, in top management, you may require more of a interpersonal role because maybe you are going off to events, you are making alliances, you're doing all of those things. And then when it comes to lower level management, um, or middle management, even maybe you are doing more of the informational role, or you are embodying more of a decisional role because maybe you are making your daily operational decisions, those types of things. Okay, so those are different roles. If we come to the different levels of management, um, so I'm sure by now you guys know that there are three levels of management. We have our top management, our middle, and our lower. Okay, so each level of management is very important to know. It's important to know what they consist of, what their responsibilities are, what's the areas of accountability. If you remember from your assignment, you had a whole section on that. So it is important to just revise this and make sure that you know what each level of management entails. So top level management, these are like the heads of the company, the CEOs, our board of directors. Our top management is there to set the overall goals for the organization, and um, they are most connected with our strategic goals. Okay, so they are the ones that set the overall strategic direction for the organization, which means they are doing the bigger planning. They are doing our long-term goals. Okay, our strategic goals are our long-term goals. It means that these types of goals are usually more than a year long, so it could even be 5 to 10 years long, and it's looking at the overall vision and mission of the company. So when you are in top management, you are required to do a lot of external research and then also form a vision and a mission based on where you want to position your company in the market. And this is more um, like done on a longer scale. So you're looking like it's not something that top managers will do every single day. It's research that's collected over time, strategies that are built over time, and then implemented over time. So they don't get involved in your daily activities or your daily operations, but they are responsible for setting those long-term goals and objectives that the rest of the organization will follow through with. So they are just looking at the overall performance of the company. They are looking at the overall efficiency and effectiveness, but they are not doing the daily um, monitoring of the company. That is not their position. Their position is to just ensure that performance targets are met for the year. Sometimes it's every 6 months, but they're just making sure that the bigger picture is met. Your middle level managers, these are your regional managers. They are your functional managers. Okay, so you know how you get your sales managers, your financial managers, marketing managers, purchasing managers. This is what middle level management is. They are responsible for implementing strategies that are set by top management in their department. So they are taking strategies that top management has set out and they are communicating it to the rest of the organization by breaking it down into smaller, more achievable goals. Okay, so um, they are just taking information from top management and then communicating it to the rest of the organization. So mostly in their departments, and they are mostly concerned with tactical goals. So these are the goals that are middle to short term. Okay, so they are the goals that you can accomplish either on a daily basis or weekly or monthly or maybe in a year, but they are more achievable. Okay. Um, Is there anyone else who cannot see the slide? Or can everybody see the slides? Can someone else let me know if they can see the slides? Okay. Troy, maybe try to exit and come back on. That should be able to help you. Okay, so last level management, we are looking at supervisors, we are looking at our floor managers. So these are the managers that are more active. Okay, they are uh, dealing with our daily operations, our more like day-to-day activities. So if you think about like your sales managers who are working in the store, you know, those people that usually address any customer concerns, like when you walk into a store as a customer and you're not happy and you want to see the manager, usually your lower level managers are the ones that will come out to assist you. So lower level managers have direct communication with clients. They also have direct or more they are more involved with employees on a daily basis. They are overlooking a lot of daily operations. Okay. And lower level management is mostly concerned with our operational goals. And these are the goals that are met on a daily basis, or they can be met for the week. Okay, but they're shorter term goals. And this, remember, all our levels of management are aiming to reach the bigger organizational goal. But what happens is throughout each level, the goals are just broken down so that they are more attainable, they're more achievable. Okay. So some skills that are required at each level of management. Our first skill is conceptual skills. So the ability to think and analyze and understand, especially when it comes to any information we're getting from the external environment, as like our market research, for example. This is very important because when you are taking information and you are able to analyze it and you're able to understand what that information means, you can use it in a more valuable way as opposed to information that you cannot dissect. So this is more important when it comes to top management. Top management is remember the ones that are associated with the bigger goal planning, the bigger goal setting. So when it comes to making these goals, we need to have certain pieces of information and valuable pieces of information for it to make sense. So that means we need to be able to understand and analyze any abstract ideas, any information that's coming in from the external environment. And this is also a competitive advantage because if you are able to extract valuable pieces of information from your market research, you will know just how to position yourself more favorably. Okay, so when top managers use this type of skill, they are mostly concerned with planning, and this is the planning of any strategic goals and objectives. And more specifically, if you're thinking about your mission and your vision statement, or just overall performance strategies, those kinds of things. Okay, so these are conceptual skills. Although that it is mostly important at top level management, all levels of management should be able to do this because when it comes to collecting information and communicating information and those kinds of skills, all levels of management should be able to understand and analyze as well. We also have interpersonal skills. So these are the more human relation skills, the ability to communicate, the ability to listen, also just to be able to delegate tasks and to lead. Okay, so remember I was telling you that there will be a lot of conflict that could arise. Sometimes employees are not happy with the work that they have to do, or sometimes they're not happy with somebody else getting a promotion, or maybe there's just some workplace tension. Having interpersonal skills gives you the ability to resolve it quickly, as quick as possible. Because remember, any tension that is formed in the organization means that we are actually like we're losing our operational time. It's reducing our productivity. So we can't afford for that to happen. So as a manager, when you have interpersonal skills, you are able to understand others. You're able to understand the emotions of other people. You are able to handle difficult situations that are maybe like very complicated, very emotional, those types of things. Okay. This also helps you with just communicating to the rest of the organization. So when you have good communication skills, you will be able to communicate information well. So, although interpersonal skills is looking at um, just more of your human relation skills, it is very useful when it comes down to communicating work information as well. Okay, and this is very prevalent in all levels of management. We have our tactical skills. So this is our tactical skills is the ability to just execute more specific tasks. Okay, so sometimes you have certain managers that have specific skills in something, and these skills will allow you to execute things on a daily basis, more like your operational level. Okay, so if you think about your lower level management, they are concerned with more of your technical skills, because what they are doing is they're working on a daily basis to meet daily operational goals. They are more hands-on with these approaches. Um, yeah, so it's just more specialized skills. Anything that is more specific to meet the requirements of a specific task. So this is a summary of all the different levels of management and where it is needed. So if you look at the three different levels, it will tell you which skill is needed within each, but you can also see that these skills are needed in all levels. It's just some levels will require more of one skill than the other. For example, top management has more conceptual skills because they're dealing with information, they're dealing with large volumes of information that they have to interpret. Middle management is mostly dealing with our human skills, but they also need a bit of conceptual skills and your technical skills. And then your lower level management, they are dealing a lot with technical skills because they are working hands-on on a daily basis. Okay. And then they also do need human skills because they are working with other people, and then also our conceptual. Okay, so that is learning unit 4. I hope that you guys understand. If you don't, please do message in the chat box. I'm going to move on to the next learning unit, which is our human resource management. Okay, so I don't know if you guys, because this is learning unit 5, so I'm sure you would have done this a while back, but remember there are 3 phases in the human resource in human resource management. You have acquisition, you have maintaining, and you have development. Okay, but firstly, to just elaborate on what human resource management is, basically, our human resource managers are the ones that are handling our human resources in a business. So our human resources are the employees. Okay, so human resource management is the handling of those employees. And here is just to ensure that employees are happy, to ensure that we have the right people, to ensure that we are retaining them, and also to ensure that we are consistently training and developing them so that the skills are relevant. Okay, and also just so it adds value to our company. So we have 3 phases of human resource management. The first phase being acquisition. This involves just attracting people from the labor market to our company. So acquisition involves the hiring of people. Okay, another word for that is recruitment. It looks at selection and it also looks at introducing those people to the organization. When it comes to the maintaining aspect, here we are looking at retaining those human resources. So we've just managed to find the right people for the job, but now we have to actually retain them. So we have to keep them happy. We have to keep our relationship with them sustainable. So that becomes the next phase of human resource management. And then our third phase, we are looking at development. So this is just there to help ensure that employees are constantly being trained, and also just to ensure that they are performing as expected. So here we are just hoping to expand on their skills, their knowledge, their capabilities, so those performance targets can be met effectively, and also so we can just enhance the overall performance of the organization, which is a competitive advantage. Okay, so if we look at the acquisition phase, it's made up of a few aspects. So we have human resource planning, job analysis, recruitment, selection, and orientation. Okay, these are exceptionally important because if we don't follow these to the T, we won't be able to hire the right people in our company, which is important. So our human resource planning is where everything starts off with. When we conduct human resource planning, we are basically assessing what our business needs. So who are the people that our business needs? This is the process that helps us identify any gaps in our company, what we need to fill, the skills and the requirements that we need to follow through it. So there are 9 steps in this process. We start off as most of your processes will start off with, we always review our organizational goals because we always have to understand what the bigger picture is. If we can understand what the vision and mission of our organization is, it's a lot easier for us to hire the right people on board and also to just ensure that they have specific skills and training so that it can meet those organizational goals. Okay, so it's like saying you want to be the biggest IT company in the world. That is your organizational objective and goal. You obviously now want to hire the right people that effectively can meet those requirements. So you obviously would need people that have IT skills or people that have a lot of experience in IT. Okay, so that's just a rough example. Um, so step 2, once we have our organizational goals, we can start to develop a strategic HR plan. Now, what this means, our HR plan is more like just a plan of action, just how we're going to go about hiring these people, where we're going to find them from, those types of things. So it's a very simple type of plan that just helps guide the direction of this process. Okay, step 3, here we are setting our HR objectives. So again, we are just identifying what we want out of this process. If it's a specific person that we want to hire or specific individuals that we want to hire, it's also identified in this step. Step 4, we are compiling a skills profile of employees. This means that we are identifying the skills that we currently have in the organization and skills that we still want to meet. So this is why having like an idea of what your organizational objectives are is very important, because when you have an idea of what this is, you know where you are lacking and what you still need in the organization. So you're going to do an internal analysis of your business in this step. And you're going to look at what is actually needed in each department, or have we met those skills requirements in each department? you'll find that sometimes managers will start this human resource planning process because they find that performance is lacking. So when you do an internal analysis, you're going into each department and you're trying to figure out where the performance deviation is happening. And once you have identified the performance deviation, it's easier for you to compile a skills profile of all your employees. Okay, so this skills profile simply stipulates who's working in your company, what are their skills, and this helps you just identify what you still need. Step 5, you're basically conducting a demand and supply forecasting. So here, from your information that you've found thus far, you are now going to forecast what skills you may need in order to reach your organizational goals. Now, if your organizational goal was to become the biggest IT company in the country, you obviously are going to need to have a specific type of labor market that you're looking into. So the forecasting will just take you into, okay, what skills do those people need to have? And obviously, we would need to hire these types of people if we want to meet the future goals and objectives of our company. Step 6, here we are looking at employment equity plans and the development of these types of plans. So I don't know if you guys recall what employment equity means, but simply when you are developing any type of contract for employees, you always need to look into employment equity. And this means just treating employees fairly, ensuring that there's no discrimination, no unfairness in any of the contracts, and that also equal opportunities are given to all your employees. So when it comes to step 6, you're just familiarizing yourself with that and developing employment equity plans that you are able to follow as an HR manager when it comes to looking for people to hire. Step 7, here we are looking at developing an actual HR plan. So here, this is the type of plan that you're going to follow when it comes to hiring the right person. You're going to implement this plan in step 8 and then just monitor how the plan is doing and just evaluate your objectives and evaluate if those objectives are being met. Okay, so from your implementation of this plan, you should be able to identify if the HR objectives are being met. And if not, you obviously have to go back and you have to reassess. But this plan is followed just so that we have a rough idea of what is happening in our internal business environment. And also when we do a set out to find the right people, we know exactly where to look and we know what type of skills we are looking for. This helps us a lot when it comes to the HR hiring process. Okay. Also, you need to understand what job analysis is. So a job analysis is usually made up of a job description and a job specification. Okay, so when we do a job analysis, we can identify a job description and a job specification. And these are usually more important for advertising a specific job or just understanding what types of skills the business environment is looking for. So, for example, when you conduct a job analysis, you will get information that you can use in your job description. And this job analysis, if you think back to the previous human resource planning, we have in step 4, we compiled a skills profile for employees. That gives us a basic understanding of what we currently have in our organization. When we conduct a job analysis, we are also looking into what types of skills do we have in our job in our business currently, and what do we still need. Um, these slides will be available in the recording. However, I can find a way to upload them. So I will try to find a way to do so for you guys and let you know if it's possible. But so far, it will just be available in the recording. Okay. Okay, so as I was saying, your job analysis does provide you with information that you can use to create a job description and a job specification. Now, it's important to know the difference between the two. So, a job description is a list of duties and responsibilities, and also the working conditions that the employee will be exposed to. Your job description um, will definitely be something that the business will be able to use as a guideline when looking for employees, because this will help them to understand exactly the the person that they are looking for to fill the job. Okay, a job specification, this gets more specific in terms of qualifications and also like the educational background, the experiences that are needed, the training that's needed, the skills that's needed. So when you look at job ads on LinkedIn, when you look at posts on social media, sometimes you have a job specification that's usually always stated. And this tells you exactly what the company is looking for. Now, jobs, well, companies put out job specifications mostly because they want to cut the time of the HR process down. So the recruitment time, they want to cut that in half, basically. Okay, so if you just put out a job description, which is just a list of duties and responsibilities that you want people to understand, um, it just anybody is going to apply for the position. So for the company to be more specific and also to cut their time in half, and for HR managers to just have this process be more efficient, a job specification is written. Okay, so that not everyone can apply, and just the people that actually meet those requirements are now applying, which makes it a lot easier. Okay, so when we are writing up the job description and job specification, the following types of information is gathered. So this is what the job analysis will include. So when you are conducting a job analysis, you're looking at the work activities. So you're looking at what work is actually being done in the business and what's lacking. Okay, so usually what brings on a job analysis is maybe you find that performance objectives are lacking, okay, and you need to fill that gap. You're also looking at um, performance standards is another main one. So this is just information about how jobs are being performed. Sometimes you'll find that an employee has too much that they're doing. So what happens here is they don't do their job properly, or they don't finish tasks on time, causing a lot of delays. So when it comes to performance standards, we obviously want to be very specific so that we can meet our performance objectives. So we look at what's lacking, and we are able to put this into a job description and find people that can actually fill those gaps. Okay. And also, just briefly, it just looks at like the people that are working in the company and what those behaviors are like, and what the organizational culture behaviors are like. Also, just what's expected in terms of skills and training. So sometimes you find that a specific skill is lacking, or if you've conducted your human resource planning, you'll find that maybe a future goal of yours is to become, maybe you want to adopt new technology. You need people to be able to handle that new technology. And especially with the movement into more of a digital era, we need people with these digital skills. Okay, so your job analysis can help you just finalize what's lacking, and then to form your job specification, your job description, and this leads us to the recruitment aspect. Okay, so once we have all of those things finalized, we've done our internal research, we understand where we need to like acquire people, where we need to recruit, we can begin the recruitment process. And this, in simple terms, is just the process of hiring the right people for the right jobs. Now, this is a very important process because if you hire someone who does not possess the right skills and training, you are putting your business at risk. And sometimes when a company is very desperate and they want to quickly hire someone, they don't take into account the fact that this person may not have the right skills, may not have the right capabilities, and this is going to affect the way that employees actually conduct work tasks. So you need to take this recruitment stage very like you have to go according to your plan, your HR plan, to ensure that the right people are getting on board. Okay. So there are a few steps in this stage that we have to follow. I'm not going to go into them too in depth, but there are 9 steps. And the first thing is we need to identify the need to recruit. So why are we recruiting? And if you think back to your HR planning, you would have identified why you were even doing this HR planning. And maybe you looked into your performance targets not being met, or maybe you just need new people on board just to pick up on tasks that are not being completed. Okay, so you identify the need and the reason behind your recruiting process. And this is where you review and update your job description and job specification. Now, sometimes when you have just started off a business, you have your job descriptions and job specifications that you've planned out. If you don't have a job specification and job description, then this is usually where you will go back and you will identify which other positions that need to be filled, and then just get specific on what are the skills required, what is this task going to entail, and this is usually what's put out onto our websites or any job platforms. The next step is just referring to the recruitment policy. So there's always going to be a policy in business because there's procedure that a company has to follow. So we do have a recruitment policy, and HR managers have to stick to this policy. And the policy basically tells us the do's and don'ts, okay, of the recruitment process. And especially with the law, we have to go according to the law. So if you think about the Poppy Act, there are certain pieces of information that can't be spread. We have to protect the information of these people that are applying. So we need to revisit the recruitment policy just to ensure that we are not going to go against any laws. Okay, and then we also need to consider factors that may influence the recruitment policy. So anything, either outside forces or inside forces, anything that could hinder this process or delay this process, we need to identify them and also to strategize around them so that these influences do not delay our process. When we're done with that, we consider the sources of recruitment. So here you are just deciding on whether you want to recruit from the outside or you want to recruit from the inside. And make sure you understand the difference between both of those. So when we are recruiting from the outside, it's better for the company. You have more innovative thinking that's coming into your company, diverse mindsets, new perspectives. You're bringing in new thinking, essentially. And when you're recruiting from the inside, you are keeping your talent that you already have. You're retaining that talent. You're giving employees more opportunities, which is a good thing. And then usually you just get someone from the external to fill those lower positions. Now, companies usually will look into both. Okay, so you just have to look at what's needed. When you are recruiting from the inside, sometimes your employees don't possess the right skills that you need. So you are forced to recruit from the outside. But in this case, sometimes you find your employees get a bit upset or there can be a lot of conflict. So in this step, it's just whatever is most suitable for the company. Okay, but it's good to have an idea of what both of those are: internal recruitment and external recruitment. In the next step, we are going to choose the most appropriate recruitment method. So how are we going to recruit, or how are we going to reach out to people? Is it going to be through social media? Is it going to be through our website? Is it going to be through another platform? Are we going to look at sometimes you have recruitment agencies that do help businesses out a lot when it comes to this step. And then you can also develop a recruitment ad, or if you are going through a recruitment agency, they usually develop this ad. But the next step is to formulate and develop a recruitment ad. And remember, in this ad, you have to specify your job description, job specification, so that the right people are attracted to this position. Okay, once we're doing that, once we're done doing that, we can start to advertise in the appropriate places, on the appropriate channels. Remember, if you're looking for specific people, you need to advertise in places that those people will be able to see it. Okay, so you don't want to put your ad somewhere where no one is bound to look into those. And if you think about newspapers, those are being phased out. So if you are looking for a job, especially if it is like especially the younger demographic, they're not going to look in newspapers. The place they most likely will look is social media. So you have to make sure that you understand who are you trying to recruit and where are those people most likely to see the ad, and then choose that type of medium. And then in the last step, we are just requesting the submission of CVs. So usually when you put out a job ad, you want people to send in their applications. Sometimes a company will provide an application form, which also gives you all the information that you need from employee, a future employee. So once we have done this recruitment phase, we move on to a selection phase. Now, the selection phase means that the company is now ready to choose an applicable candidate or individual. Okay, so we follow these 7 steps when we are in the selection phase. We start with our initial screening. So remember, potential employees have now submitted an application of some sort, or they will be maybe sending in their CVs or just letters of interest, those kinds of things. So when it comes to the selection phase, we just move straight into the screening part. Okay, so the initial screening is just where we look through all the different people that have applied. We are screening through those. Um, Application forms, we are looking into just reviewing those applications, looking at the most suitable candidates, who has met our criteria, who has met our requirements that we have put out. This helps us shortlist. It also helps us just ensure that we are choosing the right people. Okay, so you need to screen to just remove the people that are not suitable. So you'll find that sometimes people still apply even though as a job will specify what they want. People without those skills will still apply. So the screening process and step 2 will just help eliminate those. Step 3 just looks at your employment interviews. Okay, so here we are getting the right people on board. We are starting to interview them. We are starting to get to know their personality. Step 4, okay, employment tests. So sometimes when you go apply, I don't know if any of you have ever applied for a job or have gone in for an interview, but sometimes companies will ask you to take a test. So this is usually just to test in general whether or not you do have the skills that they are looking for. Sometimes it's a short test, sometimes it's multiple choice, sometimes it's just answering a few questions. Sometimes they'll give you a scenario and ask you how you would handle that scenario. So this helps you make a general assessment because when someone comes in for an interview, they can tell you anything. They can also lie on the application or their CVs. So when it comes to the employment test, this is where you actually see them doing something and you're seeing what they can provide to the organization and if it will be of value. So this step is essentially important just to ensure that you are making the right choice. Okay, step 5. So this is your reference checks. Usually on an application form or on a CV, you put down people that the business can call just to verify the information that you are stating in your CV. So those are done. They can be background checks, reference checks, anything of that sort. Medical checks are not always conducted, okay, because some companies it's not necessary, and also the candidate can say no to a medical check, but there are certain jobs that do require a medical check. For example, if you wanted to become an air hostess, you need to do a medical check because the company will not want to be responsible for anything happening to you on the job. So a medical check is sometimes crucial just to ensure that you are capable of working in a specific position. But it doesn't happen in all cases. And then your selection decision is usually where you select the right person for the job. So a decision is usually made. Straight from the orientation phase, we get right into, straight from the selection phase, we get right into our orientation phase. This is simply where we are now introducing our candidate, our new employee into the organization. So when employees are introduced to an organization, this gives them a sense of understanding of what your organizational culture is. It allows them to settle in better. So if they were feeling any anxiety, if they were feeling any fear, this part is where they start to become more comfortable and more acquainted with your company. Think about if you completely skip this step. Like, think about if you were hired in a position and your manager didn't introduce you to the rest of the organization. So your first day at work, you have no idea where the break room is, you have no idea where the bathrooms are, you have no idea who you're working alongside, where your office is. It will be very stressful. It will be lots of confusion. So introductory stage, um, this introductory stage usually allows you to become more acquainted with the organization and it helps you to adjust. Okay, so it does also help reduce staff turnover. So when you do this introductory stage, you find that employees feel more relaxed, feel more comfortable, and they also have an impression of you that you actually care and you actually are interested in their well-being, which is important. Okay, it's very important for retaining our employees. Remember, if employees feel like they are cared for and that you are taking this time to welcome them into the organization, they will have a good perception of the company. Okay, which is what we want. So this introductory phase, it happens once employees are hired, and then we move on to more of this is now where we are trying to retain our employees. So our maintaining phase is usually done to ensure that employees are happy, to ensure that they are comfortable with their working conditions. It also just ensures that they are not going to just leave our organization. Because if that happens, if employees do leave the organization, that can cause a big disruption. And we don't want that. So not only do we want to hire the right people, we want to keep these people. So maintaining them becomes essentially important. And you'll remember this aspect from your assignment. Okay, there's two main things that businesses will do. They'll have employee wellness programs. Now, these are your strategies that are intended to improve the well-being of employees. And usually what happens is a company will conduct a needs analysis. So they will try to understand what's lacking, why are employees not happy, where do they feel the business can improve. Sometimes you'll even have little surveys or uh, you'll just have like brief conversations with employees just to get a general understanding of how they feel and their overall well-being. And these strategies are there to just enhance their just their overall uh feeling in their position. You want them to feel happy. So the employee wellness programs are there to ensure that employees are happy, they're healthy, they're safe, they're protected, and this is a sustainable thing. So this will be as long as employees are working for the organization. And then compensation and reward, this is also something that's used to maintain. So, of course, rewards like money, there's benefits as well that can be offered to employees. These are types of things that can persuade an employee to stay on board and also just to ensure that they are happy. So, for example, companies can maybe every year increase a salary. Maybe they can reward employees for finishing a task on time or just being more productive, being more efficient, more effective. So the compensation and reward system, it is very effective in keeping employees motivated, keeping them happy, but we must be able to meet the following criteria. So when we are compensating, we must look into how much we are compensating or what we are compensating, and we need to ensure that it's feasible for the company. So if you do want to give an employee a raise, you need to look at whether or not it is within your budget, because you don't want to go over that budget and then put your business at risk. So you need to make sure that it is an adequate offering. Okay. You also need to ensure that it's fair and it's also in line with job expectations. So you don't want to be paying people less than they deserve, but you also do not want to be paying them too much to a point where um it's not even in line with what other companies are paying their employees. Okay, you want to be at a similar um in a similar pace as they are. Okay, and it must also be just acceptable to the employee. So sometimes you offer an incentive, you offer a reward, but it's not actually what employees want. So when you conduct a needs analysis, so when you start to have more conversations with employees, you'll start to understand what they value most, and the compensation and reward system is a lot easier in that regard. Okay. So, some types of compensation, you can just increase the salary. Sometimes you can add like a benefit to it. So you can either add like offer them medical aid, you can offer them pension funds, or you can just reward extra in addition to their salary. That's also another benefit. Sometimes you just tell them about certain perks. So maybe they have a specific, like maybe they can take a vacation, or they get vacation days, or they get a car allowance, or they get company housing, those kinds of things. Okay. And then we get to the development phase. So here, remember, as part of maintaining our employees, we need to ensure that we are consistently developing them. So we do this through the means of training and developing. All that this means is that we are now able to um, look at what employees can improve on and then how we can help them do that. So when it comes to training and developing, you are basically just enhancing the skills and capabilities of your employees. And this makes them eligible for higher positions. It keeps them happy in the organization. Sometimes you'll find that businesses will allow you to study while you're working for them, or they'll send you on a learnership course or mentorship or something of that sort, and they will pay for it. This is part of training and developing employees, and it's an essential part of maintaining and also just keeping the value of your business quite high. Okay, so you can have on-the-job training and you can have off-the-job training. It's good to know the difference between the two of these. So on-the-job training is more of your coaching. It's more of your job instruction techniques, your job rotation. It looks at training people on the job. So it looks at the organization as a whole and managers getting very hands-on and showing you how things can be done, or allowing you to make certain decisions and show you how to apply yourself in the position. Sometimes through job rotation, you also become more familiar with the jobs of others, and that helps you in your development stage. And then off the job training, it looks at maybe you have a learnership that you are doing, or you can have like face-to-face training, which is your employees that are being taught, so you can actually attend sessions and classes as part of your that's embedded in your job, actually. And also, yeah, case studies are quite popular as well. So what this means is there'll be the simulated problem that the business forms, and employees are able to solve these problems. And then when it comes to role playing, what that means is they're able to act out in the situation. So instead of just thinking very passively about it and just thinking about what they would do in the situation, role playing allows them to actually do it. Now, because developing employees is quite costly for the business because you are paying for them to improve on these skills and capabilities, you need to ensure that these skills are actually beneficial for them and the training is beneficial for them. Um, so all of this is an investment for your company. So you obviously have to do an analysis and make sure that they are done well. And then performance management, this is just looking at managing performance. Okay, in simple terms, all that it means is you understand your goals and objectives, you understand what your performance objectives are, and you are ensuring tasks are being completed on time every time. Okay. And then quickly looking at legislation that does affect our HR management. So remember these, when you are in HR management, you have to pay attention to the overall legislation that pertains to employee wellness, that pertains to how to treat employees, what are they entitled to, what are their rights, what are their responsibilities. Because when you are an HR manager, you are formulating these contracts. So these contracts need to be done in such a way that they're taking into account all of these different acts and the different laws. Okay, so the first one being Labor Relations Act. I would say know these, know what they mean, know what it entails. Okay. When it comes to the Labor Relations Act, this is just promoting and regulating good employment relationships. So you want to have a good relationship with your employee and you also want to protect them in the workplace. Okay, so you want to ensure that they have freedom. Okay, they are free to practice their religion, they are free to strike, they are free to form a trade union, they are free to have an opinion, those kinds of things. Okay, so this is what the Labor Relations Act does commit. Your Basic Conditions of Employment Act, this regulates your hours of work. So it looks at how much you should be getting for overtime. It looks at what you're entitled to in terms of your leave. So how many days off do you get? Those kinds of things. And especially when HR managers are formulating a contract, they will look into this. Okay, so they will look into what are the basic conditions that they have to stick to. Employment equity looks at just being fair in the workplace. So you want to ensure that any opportunities that are given to everyone and no one is being discriminated against. Okay, it just promotes equity in the workplace. Your broad-based Black economic empowerment, which is also known as BBEE Act, is just to also give a specific category of employees opportunities and to not restrict them or discriminate against them in any type of way. Compensation for occupational injury. This is looking at ensuring that you are protecting your employees in the workplace, in the physical workplace. So if you are injured on the workplace, maybe you do have a fund that you can claim from. Okay, so it just protects you, ensures that you are covered. Some companies will cover any like accidents or incidents that do happen. And then your Unemployment Insurance Act. So this is just some companies, what they'll do is they will deduct for UIF from your salary, and then they will, once you like maybe if you leave the company or if you lose a job, you are entitled to that amount. Okay, so all of these are embedded into your contracts. Employees are being made aware of this. They know well, uh, like what they're entitled to, what their responsibilities are, those kinds of things. And if HR managers do not go according to this, it can affect your employee base. Okay, they can take um, maybe they can take action against you as a company. So HR managers ensure that they do embed this in contracts. Okay, so it's important to just understand those. That is the whole of Learning Unit 5. We're going to go into Learning Unit 6 quickly. Okay, and Learning Unit 6 is all about marketing. Okay, so marketing is a functional department in a business that deals with all of our advertising. It deals with our our product, the pricing of our product, how we're going to promote this product, the people who we want to promote it to, and all of those aspects. Okay, so to quickly understand the difference between advertising and public relations. Okay, here is a summary of those differences. Remember, marketing deals with an actual process. So the process of promoting, we're looking at creating awareness for a product, creating brand awareness for a product. And the outcome here is always profit. Okay, so we always want to have profit when it comes to marketing. That's the end goal. That's how we know we're doing something right, is if we actually have a reaction from our marketing. When it comes to public relations basically looks at you have a representative, and the representative is there to give a positive perception of the company and address anything that is maybe a rumor or something that's not true about a company, and maybe it's causing chaos. You have a public relations officer or you have a public relations team that will form a statement and will speak on behalf of a company. Okay, so it's to safeguard and protect the reputation of a company. That's what public relations will entail. Okay. Um, I'm going to move on to our marketing orientations because these are very important to understand. Okay, so we have different marketing orientations. Now there are five. Okay, so I would say know all five of these: production orientation, sales orientation, marketing, societal, and relationship. Production and sales orientation are not as prevalent anymore because of their harsh techniques, but marketing, societal, and relationship are the most common ones that businesses will adopt. When it comes to production orientation, this is when companies don't consider the needs and wants of consumers. What they do is they will produce products and they will push for marketing at the end. They will push for sales at the end. So they will just manufacture a lot of products without even knowing if consumers will like those products or not. This used to be quite popular back then when market research and consumer demands was not a common factor. Companies didn't take those into consideration quite often because it didn't affect the outcome. Okay, if you think about the market today, we have a lot of people, a lot of businesses, a lot of the market's quite saturated with very similar products. So because of all the variety and because of all the options that we have, we do need to look into the consumer market to ensure that we can actually produce something that is a need and a want. Okay, but back then, because they didn't have as much in their market and they had a few businesses that were operating with just your basic needs, they would just assume that consumers would need these products. They will push for production over marketing. When it comes to sales orientation, this is where you have more of your aggressive sales techniques that's used. So just like production orientation, where no market research is done, sales orientation does the same thing. So they will manufacture products and they will aggressively market those products. So they will do direct marketing where they will, if you think about Avon, if you think about some businesses that come to your door and they want to sell you a product, or they will call you or they will email you. Those types of techniques is what sales orientation is centered around. So this is why it's not so prevalent today, because it's not enough to keep you sustainable and profitable in the market. You need to have some information that you're basing your product development on to ensure that there will be profits that are made from this. Okay, so if you are simply just manufacturing and then pushing for those sales, it's also very difficult to keep track of how consumers are liking your product, how many purchases you are making, and what is actually being what's actually being sold because consumers actually want it, or because you're just pushing for those sales. So it's not too prevalent. When we look at the marketing orientation concept, this is a pure marketing concept, which means that this encompasses your customer orientation, profit orientation, and it also looks at doing a lot of market research, integrating that into your promotional activities, integrating it into sales techniques, and those types of things. So when we are looking at a marketing orientation, here consumer preferences are taken into account. So consumers are their demands are heard. They're basically looking at for businesses are looking at addressing these needs and wants of consumers, and this is what drives profit. Okay, so the marketing orientation concept is reliant on market research to help us identify what these needs are. So if we don't do any market research in this step, it's very hard for us to determine what we actually need to manufacture in order to make our profits. Okay, and also this step, this marketing orientation concept, it allows us to just form better relationships with our customers because we're actually attending to the needs and wants. And you'll find that businesses will do a lot of aftercare for their consumers. So after you've purchased a product, they'll call you to ensure that you actually did like the product, or that you actually had a good experience with the product, which doesn't happen in a lot of businesses. But those businesses that want to maintain relationships with consumers, they will do a lot of these aftercare techniques. Okay, and in societal marketing, this looks at creating more of like an eco-friendly type of reputation for the business. So it looks into converting the business into more of a green business. Okay, and a lot of companies are moving into societal marketing because this is where the world is heading. You have more environmentally conscious consumers, and they want to support businesses that are actually giving back to the community and giving back to the world in some way. So you'll find that like Woolworths has now changed to their bags. You have other companies also changing their product packaging and their business practices so that they can actually become more environmentally friendly. And this is a way of advertising because consumers like to be acquainted and associated with companies that are taking these aspects into account. Okay. So you can have a number of things that you do when it comes to societal marketing. You can change your product packaging. You can change the way that you're disposing your waste. And also the way that you're advertising, you are mostly advertising to a like a target audience that is associated with being more environmentally conscious. And then relationship marketing looks at sustaining your relationship with employees or with any of your stakeholders. So remember, relationships are enhanced when satisfaction is reached and also maintained. Okay, so what happens with relationship marketing is we create a relationship with consumers so that we can ensure that brand loyalty is achieved and also just repeat sales and positive word of mouth is spread. And the financial benefits of this is ensuring that we will always have those consumers that come back, which means profitability is achieved. Okay, so we aim to form relationship marketing mainly because when we have a brand loyal customer base, we can always ensure that we will be making a profit. So companies will take into account your pure marketing concepts, societal and relationship marketing when formulating marketing strategies, which means they aim to target all of these aspects. They aim to have complete awareness on their price, their product, their promotion. They also aim to do a lot of market research to address consumer needs and wants. They aim to give back to the community, and they also aim to form good relationships. Okay. And then quickly looking at our market research process. So remember, market research is essential to understand consumer needs and wants. When we look at the market research process, it's very simple. We are identifying the research problem and objectives. So we are looking at maybe we identified that we want to target a specific target audience. Maybe there's been a change in consumer preferences. Maybe there's new competition. So these can be our problems, okay? Or the objectives could be maybe we want to increase brand awareness, or maybe we want to target more consumers. So that can be an objective. So we just need to describe and identify what the problem or the objective is. And then the second part to it is just selecting the right design. So are we going to make this a qualitative approach? Are we going to make it a quantitative approach? Okay. Thirdly, we're going to go out and collect our data. So either you're doing interviews, you're doing surveys, you are doing it telephonically, but you are collecting your data that's going to help us in step 4. So it helps us. So we're gathering all of our information, we're analyzing this data, we're editing it, we are sorting it out into useful categories so that other departments can also make use of it. And so that also when we are strategizing, we know exactly where to look. And then step 5, we are just interpreting all of this information that we have found. Okay, so this is a market research process, quite a simple process. Consumer behavior. Okay, consumer behavior, I would say know the definition to this, know what it's all about. Remember, consumer preferences are always changing, and this is why we do our market research. Some factors that can influence consumer behavior can be individual factors, so it can be our own personality, our own attitude towards a product, and it can also be external factors. So it can be the people we hang around, our family, our culture. Those types of things do affect the way we purchase. And remember, consumer behavior deals with how consumers are purchasing, the decisions they are making, how they're seeing products, their perceptions. So we also need to understand the consumer decision-making process. Okay, and this is what it is. So when marketers assess the decision-making process, we know exactly how consumers are thinking every step of the way. So when consumers are making a decision, first, we know that they identify a need or they have a problem that they want to solve. And we know that this is usually, for example, say you don't have any bread. That is, now you need bread. So that is what triggers the rest of these steps. Okay, step 2, we do an information search. Now, an information search is usually done for bigger purchases. So, for example, you're buying a car, you're buying a house, that type of thing. That will be where your information search is most needed, but you wouldn't be doing an information search for bread. Okay, so for smaller products, it's not needed. The evaluation of alternatives. So remember, consumers, like they will, if you say, for example, it is a big purchase like buying a car, you wouldn't buy the first one you see. So an evaluation of these alternatives is always done to make the best decision. Step 4, your purchasing decision is made. So this is where consumers actually will buy their product. And step 5, this is where you do your post or consumers have a post-purchase evaluation. So sometimes you regret what you've bought. I mean, I don't know how many times you guys have actually bought something and then you've come home and you're like, I shouldn't have even purchased this. Like, what was I thinking? So what marketers aim to do is to target that post-purchase evaluation, because if we can ensure that consumers are happy after they've purchased a product, we can ensure that they'll come back to buy from us. Okay, so we always need to make sure that consumers are completely satisfied once they've used the product and all of that. Okay, so the post-purchase evaluation becomes important. And then market segmentation, which I'm going to run through as quick as possible. There's three aspects to market segmentation. Now, remember, as marketing directors, it's very important for us to segment the market, which means dividing them into categories of people that we can actually target. It's very difficult for us to cater to every single individual. There are some generic businesses that cater to everyone, that has products that are your basic products like bread and milk, sugar, rice, those types of things. But for businesses that are focusing on a specific group of people, they need to be able to segment, target, and position. Okay, so when you are segmenting the market, you are basically dividing the market into groups of consumers. Now, these are the consumers that maybe are based on age, maybe are based on race, maybe they're based on occupation. So there's specific characteristics that are ironbound in the step. Okay, so it can be based on any one of these factors. Once we have segmented our target or our specific consumer market, we can begin to target them. So we can begin to identify what are those characteristics that we've segmented and how can we most effectively target them. So sometimes you have businesses that ignore these differences and just produce on a mass scale, like salt and sugar and rice and those types of products. They're not taking into account consumer preferences because they know these are needs and wants. Okay, you have differential marketing. This is when a business can focus on two or more segments. So, for example, if you think about Coca-Cola, they have their basic product, but they also cater to different segments, meaning you have Coke Zero, for example, that's created for a specific group of people. Okay, and you have your regular, you have your basic, you have reduced sugar, they have quite a lot of product offerings for different segments. And then concentrated marketing is when you have one single market that you're focusing on. So for example, if you think about like a fitness store that's only concentrated towards those fitness fanatics. It can also be based on like social class. So for example, if you look at PEP, focuses on cheaper, more affordable clothing. So it will be focused at one specific target market, which is the lower end. And then the positioning, this is how you're going to position your product in the minds of consumers. So how consumers are going to remember your product, how consumers are going to perceive your brand. And this is basically based on either the specific characteristics of your product, the specific benefits of your product, the specific application and use of your product. Okay, so how your product can be used, can it be used for more than one thing? And then also just how consumers will be using the product, how often they'll be using your product. So these are the three aspects that will be taken into account when we are segmenting the market. Okay, just segment according to age, occupation, race, culture, any of those characteristics, personality traits, any of those. And then you target your right consumer market that you want to focus on, and then you position. So you find an attribute, a benefit, or something, some characteristic that you are able to position in the minds of consumers to help them remember your product. Remember, if they remember your product, the chances of them coming back to buy your product and repeat purchase is very likely. So marketers will always focus on this aspect. And then approaching our last learning unit, we have financial management. So of course, I can't go too in depth with this. I'm just going to refresh your minds with everything in this learning unit. So make sure you do understand your different concepts in financial management. So I don't know if you guys remember from accounting, but you do have different types of financial statements. Okay, you have your statement of profit and loss, you have your statement of equity, statement of cash flows, statement of financial position. Just have a basic understanding what each of these are. And you also need to have an understanding of what these financial terms are. So your assets, liabilities, equity, income, expenses. Now remember, financial managers, they are dealing with this every single day. They're dealing with assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses. Okay, your assets is your land, your buildings, those kinds of things. Liabilities, you're mostly focusing on loans or any bank overdrafts or anything that you have money owing on. Okay, those are your liabilities. Your equity, you can think of it as your shares or your capital. Your income, you guys know what income is. It's like your sales revenue, rent income, those kinds of things. And then expenses is your cost of sales, salaries, and any other additional expenses that you have. So financial managers in a company, they are looking at developing these different financial statements based on assets, liabilities, equity, income, and expenses. What financial managers do and what their aim is to help the organization remain sustainable. So when we have these financial statements that are drawn up, they give us an indication of what the financial position of the business is. Or like where do we stand in terms of our finances. So we want to obviously make profits. We don't want to you don't want your expenses to be higher than your income, those kinds of things. So your financial managers are there to ensure that this is those financial objectives are met. So they do this through these different financial statements. And if we look at each of them, okay, you have your statement of financial position, which gives us an indication of where the organization is in terms of its finances. So where do we stand? What's our income? What's our expenses? Those types of things. When we look at profit and loss, this by the name should give you an idea of what businesses are trying to accomplish when they write up a profit and loss statement. So this should give you an idea of the financial performance of an organization. And it's all of this is usually done with a specific time or in a specific time frame. So once you do one of these statements, it doesn't mean that you will have the same information for the rest of your time in business. You'll consistently need to do these statements to keep up with the business. Okay. Your changes in equity statement, this involves just any changes that have taken place with equity or what your equity is looking like over time. Cash flow is looking at how the money is being spent. So from your daily operations, from investments, from obtaining and repaying finances. Okay, that's your cash flow statements. And then there's always notes. There's notes to these financial statements to help you just understand them better. Okay, because remember, other departments may not have any idea what the financial statements mean. So the notes help them just interpret it a lot better. Okay, so getting into the calculation aspect. So there isn't too many calculations here, but you do need to understand these ratios and these percentages. Okay, so we do have something called a ratio analysis, and there's different types. So you get two different types. There's actually three, but you need to go through your module outline and it will tell you exactly which ones you need to focus on. So we're gonna go through profit and loss ratios first. Okay. Now these ratios are, remember, a, a ratio is there. Also, it's to give you an outcome, to tell you exactly what the performance is looking like on something, or to give you an understanding of whatever you are calculating. So when businesses do calculate these ratios, they have an objective in mind. For example, when it comes to profit ratios, we are looking at gross profit percentage and net profit percentage. The first one being gross profit percentage. This is trying to calculate the organization's ability to generate profits. But here you are looking mainly at sales and cost of sales. Okay, you're not considering any other expenses, any other operational costs. Purely just sales and cost of sales. So your formula here will be gross profit divided by your total sales times 100 because we want to form a percentage. Always remember that when you are trying to form a percentage, you need to times by 100. If you are forming a ratio, you do not need to times by 100. Okay. So this first one, gross profit percentage, you are looking at sales and cost of sales without your operational costs. Now, when they give you a question, to calculate this, they give you the figures. You just need to know your formula. So you're able to put it into the formula so you can get your outcome. Okay, so familiarize yourself with these formulas. Your net profit percentage, as the name suggests, is taking into account the whole organization. So you are taking into account all your income and expenses. In that regard, you'll have net profit, which is your organization as a whole, divided by your total sales times 100 to get a percentage. Okay, so these are your profit ratios. The organization wants to understand its ability to generate profit. So this is your profit ratio percentages that you need to understand. When it comes to liquidity ratios, this refers to our ability to meet our short-term obligations. So how much assets do we have to cover our short-term obligations? Okay, do we have enough cash resources? That's what we're looking at. So you have two different types of ratios here. You have a current ratio and you have a quick ratio. Okay, another thing that you have to pay attention to the formula because they will give you your figures, but you need to be able to put it into the formula. So your first one is current assets divided by current liabilities. Now, because this is a ratio and not a percentage, you need to put it into a ratio. Like you need to state a ratio. It's not times by 100, none of that. It's put into a ratio. I hope you guys know what a ratio is, but you usually will get an amount and then you put it into like 2:1, 1:2, 3:2, that type of thing. It is not a percentage. Okay, always remember that when you're calculating for liquidity, it's not a percentage. Okay, especially if they are stating to you that they want you to calculate a ratio. So you're going to take your current assets and you're going to divide it by your current liabilities. That will give you a ratio. Now, normally the ratio should be 2:1 or more. That indicates acceptable levels of liquidity. So when you have a question in your exam asking you to calculate the current ratio, they will usually expect you to have something to explain what you just calculated. So once you've done your calculation, you need to go back and state whether or not this is an acceptable level of liquidity or not. So remember what an acceptable level of liquidity is. It's always 2:1 or more than that. Anything less means that we do not have enough assets to cover our short-term liabilities. Okay? Now, a quick ratio, this is also called an asset test ratio, and this was actually tested last year. So if you go back to past papers from last year, you should be able to see how they asked this question, and it will help you just understand how they could ask you this year. Probably not for the same one, but just how they are likely to ask these types of questions. So for quick ratio, you have your current assets, you are minusing inventory, and you're dividing this by your current liabilities. So always remember for a quick ratio, you are taking out your inventory of an organization. Okay. And this is also to determine whether there's enough current assets to cover the current liabilities, to cover your short-term obligations. So the first one, a current ratio, you are taking your current assets, you are dividing it by your current liabilities, you're keeping it as a ratio. Your quick ratio, you are minusing inventory from your current assets first. So if they give you this type of question, take your current assets minus your inventory, do that calculation first, then divide it by your current liabilities, okay? And you form a ratio here as well. Okay, so those are your formulas that you need to acquaint yourselves with. Remember percentage and remember ratio. Okay, remember the difference between the two. Then we're looking at cost volume profit analysis. So this is also a tool that helps managers just understand the relationship between sales, costs, and also your net profit. Okay, so here you need to understand the difference between a fixed cost, a variable cost, and you need to also know how to put it into a graph. Now, they've also asked this question last year, so if you go back to previous past year papers, you should be able to see how they would ask you this if they do ask you. Your fixed cost refers to a cost that remains unchanged regardless of activity in the relevant range. So, for example, it's a cost that will stay consistent. For example, salaries and rent. These are costs that will not change based on activity level. So when it is shown in a graph, it will be shown as a horizontal line, a straight horizontal line, because costs are not being changed. Okay, it is consistent. So that is a fixed cost. And think about the name. Think about the name fixed, okay? And think about it being unchanged. When it comes to a variable cost, these are costs that will change with a change in activity. So unlike a fixed cost, variable costs are subject to change. So these can be like your raw materials. It can be any other expenses that are maybe not consistent. So you don't have a standard like a debit order, things like that. Your variable costs will change. So it can either change, it can either increase or it can decrease. Okay, because these costs are changing. But when you represent it on a graph, you show it as a diagonal line. Okay, so look at how it's presented here. And just remember this, okay, because they could possibly ask you to draw a graph or they could not. But just remember how it is represented. So you have fixed and you have variable. Now, when an organization wants to calculate the total cost, okay, they look at fixed and they look at variable. This is what a total cost graph would look like. The line is also diagonal, but it will start from the mid, from your total cost line. So just remember what these graphs look like. They like to ask you the difference between fixed cost and variable cost. So try to just have a good understanding of what those definitions are. And then also another calculation that you must familiarize yourself with is your profit and loss of like your profit and loss equation. So this is also known as the cost volume profit analysis or CVP analysis. They can ask you to calculate for this. Okay, so here you are trying to calculate your profit or loss. So you'll take sales minus your variable costs minus your fixed costs. So basically what it is sales minus expenses. Okay, or sales minus total costs. It will give you your profit or loss. Okay, so either you made a profit or you made a loss. You'll only know once you have minus sales and expenses. That's just a basic understanding of what what those costs will look like. And then break-even analysis, have an understanding of what break-even means. Remember, break-even means no profit or loss was made. Okay, so yeah, sometimes a company can have like a break-even point, and sometimes they can ask you to calculate for that. And if they do, usually they'll give you figures, also your profit and your expenses, so your sales and your expenses, and yeah, usually you just subtract from the two. And then your budgets, which is the last thing that we are looking at. Remember, budgets are important because it helps us just maintain control. So have an idea of what budgets are. Um, Budgets are usually prepared sometimes by top management, but sometimes they're also prepared by your middle and your lower management. So have an idea of what top-down approach is and what bottom-up approach is. Remember, your top-down approach takes into account like your top managers are sitting, they're creating a strategic um, understanding of where they want the business to be in terms of its finances, and they're communicating that downwards to the rest of the organization. And your bottom up approach looks at your middle managers or your lower managers setting a budget, and then they're getting approval from top managers. Okay. So usually we have budgets that help us just understand our operational costs, our capital expenditure, our cash flow, and just all of those statements that we looked at in the beginning. And remember, companies need budgets as it is a form of control. So when we have budgets, it allows us to assess what we need to stay within and what we are able to spend, because you don't want to be spending too much that's out of your budget. And then also you don't want to have all of this money and then you're not using it efficiently and effectively. So budgets help us to allocate resources. It helps us to make better investment decisions and those types of things. Okay. So that's budgets. And then sources of finance. So when you are in business, you'll find that you will need to find sources of finance, whether it's taking a loan, whether it's selling shares, um, whether it's seeking investment. There are different types of ways that we can source our finance. So we can look into financial markets, which is just financial institutions like banks to acquire a bank loan, those kinds of things. We can look into money and capital markets, which basically just is um, like your capital markets is where you sell shares, so your JSE, okay? And then you can also look at primary and secondary markets. So, for example, this is also a market of selling shares. You're looking at investors. You're looking at investors selling their shares and also buying shares. And this is all sources of money for a business. So when you sell your shares, for example, it is money for the business. It's money coming into the business. Okay, now there's different types of shares that we need to understand. And they also did ask a question like this in the exam last year. So if you look back into past papers, you can see how they have asked this question. So you can have ordinary shares, and this is usually issued to the owners of the entity. So here, everyone, like you have your shareholders, and this is exclusive to these shareholders, and they have certain ownership in the company. You have preference shares. Now, preference shares is usually where shareholders received fixed dividends. So they have bought shares into the company and they've invested into the company. So they usually have more preference, or they have preference over other shareholders that don't have a fixed dividend contract with the company. Okay, so they have a specific amount that they are being paid out for their investment, and this is usually done as soon as you have your dividends that come in, shareholders will be paid out. And then retained earnings, this is when you have a lot of accumulated profits in your company. So a lot of money that you've saved up over time, a lot of profits that have been accumulated that has not been paid out to shareholders. And this money is then reinvested back into the organization. So this money can be used to source resources or to maybe make other investments, those types of things. And then debt finance. So the previous ones was equity finance, which deals a lot with shares. Remember, equity deals with shares. When we go into debit finance, now this is looking at a loan. Okay, it's mostly looking at loans. It's looking at obtaining money through like other financial markets. So you can have long-term financing, which deals with loans, it deals with leases, it deals with bonds. So you are looking at anything that you'd have to pay interest on. So when you obtain a loan from a bank, for example, you usually have an agreed amount that you are paying back over time with additional interest. Sometimes an organization can lease their assets, which also incurs an income for them. And you can also have like other types of like your vehicles and your land and things like that that's leased. Okay. And then short-term financing, this looks at like your short-term loans, or sometimes a company can look into bank overdraft. So this is to negotiate with with banking providers to give you a little bit more money than what you have in your account. And this is also very popular. You have lines of credit, okay, which is also similar to a bank loan, but it's only available for a specific period of time. So a business can look into lines of credit for just additional money, but it will only be available for a short period of time. And then revolving credit. Now, this is also like lines of credit, but this is usually over a longer period of time. You can also have factoring. Okay, so this is when companies help each other out. So yeah, that's pretty much what factoring is. And yeah, short-term loans from banks, usually when you want to make a quick investment or when you have money owing, you can take a short-term loan just to cover that expense and that cost. And then lastly, other sources of finance that we look into is venture capital. Venture capital looks at when companies invest in other businesses. So here you have like companies that will buy shares in other companies, and these are usually for more established companies. You wouldn't find these types of businesses that want to invest. They don't really invest in still developing companies. They only have interest in well-established companies because they know that profits are being made, dividends will be paid out, and that type of thing. And then business angels, these are the businesses who want to invest in companies that are showing potential growth. So these are like your startup businesses, and they provide that income, or they provide that capital for shares in return. And then crowdfunding, which I'm sure some of you have heard of this, it's usually used on social media, and this is used to obtain money from individuals. So individuals can contribute to raising money. They can go to a website or they'll be directed to a page where they can contribute. And this is also a way for companies to make money. Okay, so that is the whole of Learning Unit 7. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions. I will try to find a way to upload these slides. I don't know where I would upload them, but this recording will always be available. Does anyone have any questions that I can answer for you? Remember, your exam is 2 hours, okay? And yeah, you should be okay. Just go through your past papers. Make sure that you practice on your past papers so that you can familiarize yourself with how questions are being asked. The exam structure for this year is a little bit different. Um, you do have you have a lot. You have like multiple choice. You have true and false, and you have your case study, your definitions. And also it's 100 marks, so it's a little bit less than the previous years, so you should be okay. But is there any questions surrounding this or on the content? Is everybody okay? Is everyone good? Okay, well, thank you guys for attending. I hope this was very helpful. Um, if you do have any questions, then just if you guys need my email, I'm gonna write it in the chat box for you, and then you can just email me if you need any assistance. Okay, I'm gonna put my email in the chat box for you guys. Is everyone good? Okay, I'm assuming you guys are good. Um, okay, well, good luck for your exam, guys. Remember, if you need anything at all, just email me and I will do my best to help you on there. Okay? Any questions at all, if you do have it, you can contact me personally and I will get back to you. Okay, and happy studying. Remember, just relax. It's going to be fine. I promise you, it's going to be okay. You're going to pass this. You're going to do so well. Okay, I will see you guys next semester. Bye, guys. Have a good afternoon.